What's up, everybody? Geoff, Incontrol Robinson here with the second Tyranids list and list review kind of tactics video. I want to give a special shout out to everyone that watched and participated in the last one. I actually made quite a few mistakes, and my lists were, at least one of them was illegal, if not both. So I really appreciate that, actually, because these were lists that I had written up on my own. I had played them against a grip, about 12 other people, but it's 8th edition, and they're not scouring my list. I'm generally pretty trusted, so they assumed I knew what I was talking about. But I really appreciate that, because I'm actually going to be heading to the BAO at the end of the month, and the worst thing in the world would be to take an illegal list and have it discovered, after playing against people that paid a fee and joined a tournament, and even worse would be to travel. So catching these before that and learning would be the best. As is tradition of these videos, by the way. Barrison was snoring the last one. This time he was putting his head in our toilet, so you can get the kind of idea of what kind of tone we're doing here. So just to roadmap this video, I'm going to go over my now, hopefully, legal list and talk about the pros and cons of it. I'm going to talk about my Harridan list and why I don't think it's viable, and the state of kind of Tyranids in that regard. Then we're going to go through a few of the YouTube comments to that video that gave some great feedback in terms of a couple of things I said incorrectly or some thoughts to be had. And then we're going to churn through some lists that some of you guys submitted to my incontrol@csa.gg email, I believe it is. It's linked on my Twitter. I think it's the one I put in the description of the previous video, and I'm happy to go through these lists. What I do want to say, though, is the style of how this is going to go is I'm going to give you my best opinion, what I know, but as we saw in the last video, and I consider myself a bit of a Tyranids expert, I am going to get things wrong, or I'm not going to know things. And because this video is pretty casual and pretty off the cuff, I'm also not going to promise anyone that I did 5 hours of research and this is ironclad the truth. So what I'm kind of hoping to do is give you my opinion, talk about things, pose questions, and then I encourage you to check out the comments to this video, because there's some really knowledgeable and super helpful people in there that helped me, and I'm hoping they'll get excited about helping you as well, and this can be a place that we do this. We look at lists, I talk about it into the camera, and then you guys give me your opinions and what you think in the comments, and we all learn together. I think that's a really fun way to do 8th, and as 8th was coming, this is something that I was getting pretty excited about doing. So as long as this is fun and you guys like it, and it seems to be something that people are excited about, we'll keep doing it. Okay, I'm going to be gone for the next few weeks, but when I get back, it's BAO time, so you bet there's going to be some cool content. So anyways, without further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and jump into what I'm really excited about, is talking about my current list that I am strongly, it's like 95% going to be what I do for the BAO. So let me go ahead and swap over to that. So here is the list. It is, I'm pretty damn certain it is legal at this point in time. A couple of the things that I missed in the list that I was playing previously is I was running a battalion, but I had 4 heavy support choices, 2 Molochs, 1 Trigon, and a unit of 3 Biovores. You cannot do that. So then my list was, well, actually, excuse me, that's not true. My list was legal because it had 4 of those options, but 3 of them were in the Spearhead detachment. And because I was not trying out this Genestealer Cult thing, I actually had enough HQs to do that. So I take that back. I was running a illegal list for other reasons, but legal for that reason. So anyways, with these things moved around to make this more legal, I am going to go with the Genestealer Cult Vanguard. I have 2 units of 20 pure strains, 1 unit of 17 pure strains, and 17 is a weird number. It's basically what I had left over. And then I've got 2 Patriarchs, 870 points, 5 drops, essentially happening here. The reason why I think it's worth doing this is you save 20 points per unit of 20 from going from Tyranid Genestealers to pure strains. They are exactly the same stat line. I'll talk about why there is an argument against why that would be good or bad. And then the Patriarchs are just flat out better. They have 1 more strength. They are 12 points less, which, if you want, gives you room to add a familiar. It allows them to cast an additional power for 1 time for another turn. They have a couple of attacks, but that's pretty middling. Only 12 points is not that big of a deal. But the unfortunate thing is the Patriarch really only knows 1 power. You give them, either the mass hypnosis or mind control, or Might from Beyond, or whatever it is, and then they also know Smite. So what you're basically paying is a 12-point, I want to try this one thing, and then I will also try Smite in the same turn. I mean, Smite's great, don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on Smite, and there are plenty of opportunities to try and use one of their amazing powers we'll talk about in a second, but then also Smite, which is kind of cool. But I would just tell you, absolutely save those 12 points for, like, I've got nothing else to spend it on, which does happen. Is it better than 3 Termagants? Yes. So absolutely consider it that way. The reason why, though, I love this Vanguard detachment is, A, the Genestealers are absolutely incredible. They just simply are. They are elite choices in this case, so they're not troops, but they are still infantry, so they move through buildings. They can still pick up the relic, all that kind of stuff. And until missions change, where there perhaps is OBSEC back, but I don't see that ever happening. There's like pseudo OBSEC through missions with heavy support, fast support, that kind of stuff. And as long as it's about body count, and as long as there's still infantry, there's not really a reason for it to be bad, other than I don't get another battalion or something like that. So it affects me in the command point department, but you save the points, which allows you for more units. It's like 4 more Genestealers, or it's, you know, the cheaper Patriarchs that are also better. That Strength 6 is a big deal. A lot of the vehicles are Toughness 6. Yes, they have Shred, so again, Strength 5 doesn't like become the worst thing in the world, but it's still pretty damn good. And a lot of like a little bit tougher Space Marine characters are Tough 5, Primaris Marines, I believe, that kind of stuff. So there is a big advantage to it. And Patriarchs, by the way, are Patriarchs and Broodlords. I'm not hating on Broodlords, but my god, they are worth the points. The powers are incredible, but they alone, 6 wounds with a 5-up invul. And don't forget about the 4-up save, too. That was something that I forgot about. So in Ruins, that kind of thing, you're actually working with a 3-up save. And if you're just getting bolter fired, don't take that 5-up. I cheated myself out of that a lot. But the powers. I've played several practice games with this specifically. And at least for right now, in the flyer-heavy spam that's going on in the meta, Storm Ravens, that kind of stuff, the mind control is incredible. Tyranids don't have access to something that's like, oh, your flyer, it's dead, man. I did 12 wounds, woohoo! Like, the best we can do is smite a whole bunch, drop a couple of Molochs, and then maybe you took a Harpy. Harpies are kind of cool, or something like that, and you did like 4 or 5 other wounds, and it still has 7 or 8 or 9. It's those Imperial flyers that have like double last cannon, triple missile, and a melta, or something stupid like that. And if you take over their twin brother and shoot the other one with it, you can actually drop like a 14 wound flyer in a single round of shooting. I know, it's crazy. And that's incredible. Obviously, average dice don't necessarily go that route, but with a little bit of luck and a couple of smites, you actually can. And that's a huge thing. That's a big deal. Obviously, there's other potential things going on here. One of the things I want to pose to you guys is the power says you can either shoot with it as if it's your own, or you can charge with it in the combat phase. If I grab someone's Wraith Knight or whatever, just some gigantic awesome melee thing, and I charge it into my opponent's the rest of their army, do they have to Overwatch it? I say this as a person that fully could just open the book and see if the language says you must Overwatch when someone charges, or if it says may, but I pose the question to you guys. It's an interesting thing to think about. But that power is ridiculous. It's incredible. It's really good. Then they get Mass Hypnosis, which is you may not Overwatch and you're -1 to hit. The -1 to hit basically makes it the horror, only the you can't Overwatch is gigantic. If you're facing like frag cannons, which put out, a unit of 5 guys with 2 frag cannons put out 4d6, strength 6, -1 damage. Auto hitting, it's like a death sentence to Overwatch. To charge into that Overwatch. So if you have like a Moloch nearby or a Tyrannicide or something like that, sure. But otherwise, like a unit of Genestealers will lose 80% of their guys before they even get into combat. But with this power, that becomes something that you now can do for free, which is absolutely incredible. But that's just like the most severe application of that. Not being able to Overwatch and -1 to hit is one of the strongest powers I can think of. And then there's the +1 strength and +1 attack. That's awesome, but with my 2 Patriarchs, I always take Mass Hypnosis and I always take Mind Control. I don't know of a situation where I wouldn't do that. Like grabbing an Imperial Knight and shooting with it, or not having an Overwatch, are 2 powers that are head and shoulders better than having my Genestealers go up to 5 attacks and Strength 5, which, by the way, is incredible. Don't get me wrong. I just think it's outshined by the other 2 abilities in utility and use. So that's that. That is legal. It gets me 1 command point, which is not great. You need 3 elite choices, 2 HQs. And that's how you're going to fit that in there. And I just think they outperform the Tyranids. The counter argument to that would be if these were Tyranid Gene Stealers and Broodlords, the powers are still pretty okay. You are able to cast the double move on them. They're affected by Venom Thropes. I think that's a strong argument. I don't think that if someone's like, well, I prefer that, I don't think you're wrong. I think that's totally okay. For me personally, I was finding the -1 to hit pretty cool as like an anti-alpha strike. But after that, my Gene Stealers usually outpace the Venom Thropes, and then the Venom Thropes are in the back protecting my Biovores, and that's about it. Maybe a unit of Termagants, maybe a unit of Warriors. Do I want 93 points of, oh no, I hope you hurt me a little bit less? I'm finding the answer to be no for right now. I think that could become something that I come back to and visit if the meta switches, because right now I'm not seeing a lot of anti-hordes, which is what 57 Gene Stealers are. I'm seeing more like, well, here comes 9 last cannon shots, and I'm like, sure, yep, put that into my Gene Stealers. They still get a 5-up. I don't care, you know, and that's great for me. So for right now, I'm pretty comfortable in that exchange. Then we get on to the Tyranids Battalion. Starting off with the Swarmlord, I think I talked about this last time. Swarmlord is one of my favorite guys in the entire game. Just absolutely love him. Fluff, stat line, style. He's a Tyranid. He's like the general Tyranid. Love it. I love it so much so that I have a Swarmlord, of course, but I'm having a custom Swarmlord made by my good friend and artist here in Northern California, Israel Sanchez. We went with the, and I think I talked about this last time, but I'm just going to talk about it again. We went with Chapter House custom sword arms, which I think are pretty cool, but if positioned right, are amazing. They're just big biological swords, which look, in my opinion, way cooler than a Hive Tyrant literally grasping a sword. I think that looks kind of silly. And then we went with massive scything talons on his lower arms, which of course are not what he uses, but it just looks really, really cool. And then if you look at the Swarmlord pictures, actually, they have like, he has like mandibles on the side of his face. We actually custom put that in there as well, and I'm really excited. Israel's an amazingly talented artist, so of course when that finishes I'll have that ready. But anyways, Swarmlord, and I played now close to 20 games in 8th edition. He's died only a few times, which is amazing, because I think everything in 8th edition is very killable. He's by no means indestructible, but Catalyst, 5-up invul or 4-up in close combat, and then you take the 6-up Warlord trait, you have so many checks against damage. And most of what gets put into him is a last cannon, a melta, that kind of stuff. So obviously the high damage, you know, of a 5 or 6 on those rolls is really bad. But if you get that 5-up against all 5 or 6 of those, assuming you fail the invul, which is also an incredible stop there as well for 1 and 3, you're talking about taking 5 or 6 damage down to 2 or 3 damage, which is extremely manageable on a 12 wound character. So I absolutely love him. He packs a wallop. Try not to overestimate him, though. Sometimes I will multi-charge like 2 tanks. He probably doesn't drop both the tanks, but there's good strategy to be used there where like you lower their tiers and you make them have the hard choice of like, do they want to pull back both tanks, in which case they're not shooting at all? Are they crammed into a corner, and can they even do that? So there's really cool things you can do in that way in terms of strategy, but for the most part, if you're like, well, I need first blood and I want to kill something, put him into one thing. And don't take it lightly as well. Hitting on 2+ and wounding most things, at least tough 4 or less on a 2+, you're going to kill 5, 6, 7 things. Especially with that D6 damage. Even a unit of Terminators with like a 3-up invul are not safe. You're going to kill 2 or 3 of those guys. Maybe 4. So kind of keep that in mind. But I love him. Swearbind. I always take Catalyst. He always puts it on himself. He's a bullet sponge. People just are drawn to him because of how scary he is, and he's the Warlord. And he's right in your face because I do the double move on him 99% of the time. And then the second power I take on him is the Horror. Onslaught has some interesting uses. It can be a free D6 towards something, and it says they can still shoot and charge as per usual. So that's kind of cool, but I always go with the Horror, -1 to hit and -1 leadership. The leadership I need to remember more of. Honestly, though, it's kind of sad because that too has become a little bit like 7th was, where it's like, remember your -1 leadership, and like, it doesn't matter. A lot of things are fearless. Space Marines re-roll it. Leadership 9 on a single D6 or whatever. You killed 4 guys. I need to roll a 6 to lose 1 guy. Oh no, I don't. Or they have like 12 command dice and they roll 2 dice to just pass it. So don't worry too much about that. It's more about the -1 to hit. Tyranids, and really just 8th edition, you're facing a lot of heavy weapons that if they move, they're at -1. If you can make that -2 especially if you're still running Venomthropes. Now it's -3. If they moved their horde and they're shooting into something that's -1. Or you're facing like Tau or Orcs, sometimes you can just make it so they can't shoot, which is incredible. So, an amazing power. I then put the Tyranid Prime in there. It's a cheap second HQ, so I'm not trying to oversell this as like, I think it's the best thing ever. It's not necessarily, but for 106 points, you get Bone Sword, Lash Whip, and you get a guy that makes the other warriors hit on a 2+. He himself is fairly defensible, a really good stat line, especially for just 100 points. 3-up save, like he's just pretty good, but he is the cheapest HQ that then gives Synapse, is fairly reliable, has a lot of wounds, that kind of thing. And I like it. So I've only played a couple games with that, but I just it's the tax, but it's a tax that I'm okay with. So imagine getting a letter in the mail that's like, you owe us, but you know, you're also going to get free tacos for the year, and you're like, well, this is pretty great actually. 2x10 Termagon, self-explanatory. That is the absolute tax minimum. It's unfortunate. It's 2 additional drops. Anything that shoots into them, they just kind of disappear. Put them in ruins so that if they don't have a -1, then you're getting a 5-up save. Park on objectives. My list has gotten really tight, and I have 57 harder to kill, heavy-hitting bodies. So this is very much so an afterthought. They're in the backfield hiding. 1x3 warriors. This was in the list. 81 points. They have Adrenal just because I had the points left over for it. It's nice though. That's kind of cool. They sit around with the Prime. The Prime makes them better. Hits on +1, so their weapon skill is 2+, which is not bad. Tyrannocyte, I upgrade it to Barbed Stranglers. Check the points for me on that. I believe it's 173, but you know, look at this list and tell me what's right or wrong. Please do. I am in love with this. Reese Richard Robbins III. A man who isn't quite a Robinson, so we'll forgive him for that. But as a Robbins, which is like a distant bastard family of the Robinsons, he's still a semi-intelligent man. He's been running this since the very beginning, and he's right. It's 173 points, so that's a lot, but it becomes a frickin' gunboat. And it becomes one that is specifically kitted out and good at removing hordes. Now, with my list, I have other tools for this, so I'm willing to accept that there's an argument against the necessary need for spending what ends up being like 50 more points on this, and those points could go elsewhere if you just go with the base Death Spitters. But 5d6 at strength 5 -1, range 36, and then if they have 10 or more hitting on a 4+, that's really good. That's really, really good, especially since my Tyrannocyte almost never gets shot at except for as like an afterthought. So I really swear by this. I love dropping in the Swarmlord and then having that either clear away for him or just sit there and do stuff. But even shooting into vehicles with 3+ save, and if they're like tough 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, he's making you take a 4-up as well. And he'll put on 3, 4, 5 wounds on you, which you fail 2 or 3 of. And that's pretty cool. Obviously not ideal. It's better for him to shoot into chafe infantry. So Kroot, conscripts, that kind of stuff. He'll actually clear a giant wave away for you in shooting, which is nice. I can't get enough of the Molochs. Same analysis as last time. They're 105 points a pop. They're 12 wounds. And then I'm going to get into the comment section here in a little bit, but something that I really like someone said about Molochs. We'll come back to that in a second. But they're just great. I looked at my list and it was either keep the Biovores and drop 1 Moloch or keep both the Molochs. Ultimately, if I don't have Venomthropes, I dropped the Biovores, even though I love them. I absolutely love them. Future lists that are very different, or perhaps over 2,000 points, will have like 6 Biovores if I can do it. They're just great. But Molochs give you just too much utility. There's score potential for them. They can snipe characters if you improperly deploy. I love them. Every one of my games, sometimes their damage is fairly middling, but then what they do as a distraction is incredible. And then just the Trigon. And you always put Adrenal on it. It's just 5 points, I believe. It gives them that 8-inch charge as opposed to a 9, which you can fairly reliably make with that reroll if you use your command point. It just packs a punch. It's your 1-2 punch with the Swarmlord. If you're facing like a Knight list or something like that, the two of them could tag team a Knight and pretty reliably drop it. Or at least do severe damage to it. So I just, I love it. So at the end of the day, it's 2,000 points, 2,000 points, 7 command points. I've played, like I said, close to 20 games. I've only lost 1, and that was honestly me misplaying into a flyer list, a heavy flyer. There's like 2 Stormraven, 4 little flyers. It was ridiculous. Or no, that was the 3 tanks, 2 Stormravens, 2 flyer list with Guilliman, which is something you'll end up seeing. And then I've tied one game, and that too, I feel like was the destiny was in my hands and I misplayed it. So still learning a lot. But this list is, in my opinion, a very good all takers list. Noticeably, it doesn't have much in the way of an answer for flyers specifically, but that's where the mind control power comes into play. And then I have options which I don't mind, like Moloch's double teaming a flyer, and a little bit of smite spam can do 8-9 wounds in a single turn. Which, as long as I find if you can just downgrade a flyer, it becomes a lot less lethal. So that's the list. Let me know what you think. If I was a YouTube editor, we would take that out, but I am not. Okay, so with that, I want to get into the YouTube comment section. So there's a weird Inception moment there. I liked a lot of what people were saying here, and I just want to kind of touch on that in this video and respond to it. This guy submitted a couple lists. We'll talk about that in a second. And then I like this a lot. So Vetra here talked about how a Moloch has done its Terror from the Deep with any time before turn 3 counts as having arrived. So the argument here is that after you do Deep Strike in, as long as it's before turn 3, you could burrow and continue to do Terror from the Deep beyond turn 3, which is not how I've been playing it. But the second I read that he said this, that makes complete sense to me, and I really like that. So let me know what you guys think. Do you believe that a Moloch could Deep Strike in turn 1, burrow turn 2, Deep Strike in turn 3? It's not truly Deep Strike, it's Terror from the Deep. And then burrow turn 4, and then again do his attack on turn 5. Because that would be pretty incredible. I can absolutely see his logic. It's the same kind of thing like things arriving from reserves for like Space Marines, but then getting into a transport or whatever, and having been arrived, they can leave the battlefield in a transport. It's a little bit different in that case, obviously, but I like his logic here. And then his argument here is he talks about if you do the Pierce Rain Gene Stealers, you cannot do the additional move, and they don't benefit from Venom Thropes. So let me know what you think about that. That is the argument against going for the Gene Stealer Cult. I also think you can pretty reliably make 2 battalions if you go with Tyranids as a Gene Stealer detachment, basically, and then also the Swarm Lord stuff. There's going to be a little bit of tax in there, but because Gene Stealers are troop in the Tyranid Codex, that gives you a lot more flexibility to have the kind of troops you'd want anyway. So that's something we'll revisit, but I really think, at least for right now, with how heavy the flyer spam is, having the ability to grab one of their flyers and nuke their friend out of the sky is a really big deal. It's Warp Charge 7, then you have to pass what is usually... you have to roll higher than a Leadership 9, and you've got rerolls in there and that kind of stuff, so I'm loving it. And then what was a couple other things people said? I like that someone, James Jones, touched on the idea of having 9 warriors with Death Spitters coming out of a Trigon. You can do the Tyranid Prime there as well to make them hit more reliably. 27 Strength 5, -1 AP shots. Yeah, that's a lot of DACA. That'll do some pretty decent damage. And then I got asked about this, and I think this is a great question. Someone said, what do you think of Carnifexes? We'll talk about that in the list review as we get to that in a second. Generally speaking, if you're doing Carnifexes, go Stone Crushers. There's almost no argument to do otherwise. I believe they're very close in points, and they pack a wallop. They're really, really quite good. I personally have like 9 or 12 Carnifexes. I can't remember which it is, but I have 4 Stone Crushers. They're gorgeous models. I love them. And they're pretty good stat-wise. I find Carnifexes to be in the same-ish spot they were in previous edition, although obviously in a much healthier place because they move around and you can swing before other people if you charge first. But low attacks, low weapon skill, not particularly fast, not a crap ton of wounds. Their best argument is that they're fairly inexpensive, but my lists are really tight because I just want... Like, a Gene Stealer is almost more defensible than a Carnifex, and it attracts less attention and doesn't get shot by, like, 3 last cannons and die. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know what your guys' experience is with Carnifexes. And a lot of positive comments. This is where we did catch the illegal list. I had Gene Stealers listed Pure Strain as troops, which made... I had a 2nd battalion, which is not possible. And then there's a couple of things I said incorrectly as well. Let's see. Oh, you know what it was? Is I had Venom Thropes at 75 points, and this is really funny. This is actually where it is right here. Aaron Burton, thank you very much. You have to pay for the lashes. They're 6 points. But if you go to their profile, the melee variety of the lashes, which is obviously just like the other version, it's either the melee or the range, but one or the other costs 0, and the other one costs 6. And what they're trying to tell you is that you only pay for the lashes once, but you get 2 profiles. But it doesn't say that, other than on their page it says range and melee. But then when you go to where you pay for it, one of them says 0, the other one says 6. Well, when I looked up and checked on my list, I saw where it said 0. Okay. So yeah, thank you for catching that. Hopefully other people look for that kind of thing too. Generally speaking, if you have a troop, well, if you have a non-character, be very careful about what you think is free, because it's probably not, unless it explicitly says. So like Scything Talons are free. And it goes out of its way to make that pretty clear. So be very careful. Let's see. Frygon Tunnel only works on troops, so not Pyrovores. That was a comment that I made in the last one. Honestly, I don't own Pyrovores. It's like the only Terran models I don't have. And that was just something I was spitballing, but you cannot do it, so don't do that. And this is where Andrew H. helped me catch that Pierce Train are elite choices, so don't fall into the same trap that I did. And he said you didn't cover the Exocrine and Old One Eye. I've actually been looking at Old One Eye. He's fairly inexpensive, I believe. Well, I don't have it right in front of me. He's like, what? Isn't he like 100? Anyways, he's really inexpensive. He is a Carnifex, but he's like a Carnifex plus. He's a character. He's at 10 wounds or less, I believe, so you can't shoot at him until he is your closest target. And he has the ability to generate more attacks, and he hits like a freight train. So I actually really like Old One Eye. If anyone's doing a Carnifex list, he makes them a little bit more reliable. He's defensible because he's that character, and he is really good as a Carnifex, and not for too much more points than you would pay for a Carnifex anyway. So I very much so think he's awesome, especially if you start mixing in things like Malanthropes to babysit and walk them up the field. Now they're just that much more reliable for only 90 points, and that's an HQ choice, so it's not like it's completely a tax. And then the Exocrine is all the rage for a lot of people. I'm seeing people take 2 or 3 Exocrines. I have nothing bad to say about them. They're the best shooter in the Tyranid Codex. They're very fearsome. They're defensible. They made them tough 7, I think, 14 wounds, I believe, or 13. I think they're oddly 13 wounds. But that's incredible. And 12 shots, if they don't move, hitting on 3s. At strength 7, range 36. I mean, that's all really good stuff. So you won't hear an argument against them from me. I personally just really, and again, not to sound like a dead horse. Wow, that's weird. Not to beat a dead horse. Maybe sound like one too, though. But anyways, I really like the style of my list. Gene Stealers, I have like 100 of them. Swarmlord, Psychic Powers, that's actually all my favorite stuff. So if I can make a list with my favorite stuff that is also really competitive, I'm jazzed. And I think I've done that. And in my practice games, I have done that. And I play against a lot of the best players in California, at least. They get me prepared for these big tournaments, and it's been doing very well. So I will come back to those. I have 2 Exocrines myself. I think the Haruspex is pretty cool, if not a little bit overpriced. So there's definitely other things to talk about, but for right now, if you don't have a more specific question, I'll probably just leave it at that. I think you're not making a wrong choice if you go with Exocrines. And a couple people caught that. Eric Nelson, thank you as well. And then the last thing I want to touch on in here is someone asked about if I'm going to do non-competitive list reviews. The pretty profound answer is no. I think if you're having someone review your non-competitive list, then, it's fine. I'm not about to say something mean or something like that. It's just that you could always answer any analysis I give with, well, those are the models I have and I just want to have fun. So, and if if you're just making a non-competitive list, like, that is the answer you give to everything. So, okay, so those are the comments on that last video. I hope that clears up some of the things that we caught. One last thing before we move into the list review and end this video. On that is I did try out my Harridan list. That was seen in the previous video, so if you want to look at the line by line for that, you can check out the previous video, the one that we just kind of showed the comments to. Oops. Echo of Eternity. There we go. I'm a good producer. The Harridan's pretty bad, I would say. And this topic is just that I think the Gargantuans for Tyranids right now are pretty bad in general. They don't have an invul. They're not particularly tough. The Harridan's tough 7. It's a flyer, but it doesn't have hard to hit or anything like that. They don't come with Feel No Pain or anything like that, and their cost is not adjusted for that. So Imperial Knights and some of these other big daddies, they at least have like a 5-up invul or sometimes a 4-up or something. Or they're really high toughness, tough 8, tough 9. It's not the most incredible thing to see. But once again, the Tyranids are kind of given the finger here, where they're just tough 7. They have a good amount of wounds, which is fine. 3-up save. And that's not going to cut it in 8th edition if you're paying 800 plus points or close to it for something. The Barbed Haradul and the Sith Haradul are a lot less expensive, but the Sith Haradul got even worse, I feel, in 8th edition. Its Flamer template is like, it's like 2d6 strength 6, I want to say. Something like that. So I have the book, but you can... The specifics aren't what my criticism is. It's like in that ballpark. It's just not impressive. They don't have stomps, which they could have been given Titanic feet or something like that. So what are you paying all those points for? I played about 3 games with the Harridan. It died at least at the bottom of turn 1 and 2 of the games. But for me, it's not even just that. It's that they don't hit that hard. 12 strength 8 -2 D3 damage shots, or you can take D3 mortal wounds to go up D6 strength. But the problem with that is most of the things you're shooting at are usually at most tough 7. So if you're adding D6 strength to your shot, you're shooting at, tough 8 or more for the most part, and that's very rare. So that ability is not super incredible. If it was like add D6 strength and it does D6 damage and it's -3, oh wow, now we're in the department of that's the most powerful Tyranid gun I can have. That's cool. Otherwise, it's just basically a little bit better than a Venom Cannon. What's a Venom Cannon, you might ask? It's that thing that we used to put on our Hive Tyrants 17 years ago. But anyways, I know I'm being a Debbie Downer here. I have a Harridan. You can just barely see her behind me on top of that. It's one of my favorite models, and ironically, I won every game that I played with it, but it died. And the only reason I won was because I had about 57 Gene Stealers. That's how good they are, is you can take 830 points out of my list. And in one of the games, I did 0 damage, basically. In the other game, I did 13 wounds to a Storm Raven. It had 1 left, and then I died. Awesome! I also tried out the gargoyles coming off of it. That was incredibly underwhelming. If you want to talk about a 1-2 punch to Geoff's stomach of sadness, it was how I flew the Harridan up, shot into a Storm Raven, charged it, didn't kill it. In Overwatch, it does 8 wounds to me, and then at ballistic skill -2 or whatever, it does another 9 to me through its Melta and Last Cannons, and I'm like, okay, this is awesome. And then my gargoyles got out and ran from a flamer unit, charged a ship, did nothing to it, and then died. But I won. Anyways, that was impressive. I have to close the window. Not embarrassing, there's kids running outside. So if you have comments about that, let me know. If you guys think there's a different experience, let me know. But just putting it out there, don't run any of the Gargantuans. Absolutely don't. Save those points for just more of the heavy hitters and more bodies. Tyranids can do well by putting Gene Stealers on the table. So let's get to some lists. Now, I'm going to do the best I can to keep your real names off of this. I know that for a lot of people, they're very stringy on that. So if this really bothers you, let this be a warning. And hopefully I don't upset the people that are here. I didn't retype all of your lists into a Word document, or I'm not a graphic artist, so I don't, or I'm actually just not even that smart, so I didn't block out your names. But I have these windows mostly hiding your names, but a few of your names appear a couple times. So if you hate me after this, I understand. All right, let's do it. We're going to go through a couple of these lists and we're going to end the video. And it's a long video as always, because that's just the way apparently I do things. Okay. First up, we have a couple of Tyranid lists here. He calls it the Tar Pit Tyranid Army. I like it. Battalion starting off with a Turvigan with massive Cytalons. It is 13 power, 250 points. That's a bargain. I love what the Turvigon does. It's an HQ. It has a psychic power, which is nice. Massive Scything Talons are some of the best weapons in the Codex for Tyranids. You do not want to or need to upgrade it to the Crushing Claws or whatever. The high strength is cool. I think it gets up to like strength 14 or 12 or 13, something in that department, but you don't need it. They make you -1 to hit, and these are just awesome. They're D6 damage, rerolling ones. Really, really good stuff. Then he goes to the Tyranid Prime with Devour plus Sword and Whip. Yeah, I guess it has 2 sets of arms, so I guess you can do that. 106 points? Is it really? I gotta check into that then. Yeah, maybe I did that wrong. I definitely am playing my Tyranid Prime as only having Sword and Whip. I'll have to check the language on it as to whether or not it says replace one of its set of arms with that. I'm sure it does now that I look at that. But if that is the cost of it, then thank you. By looking at your list, I'm feeling better about mine. Troops, 30 Termagants. That's just great. They pair with the Turvagon really well. Don't ever have the Turvagon be like a transport. In my opinion, that's not really worth it. I would rather have the 30 out there so that if they decide to put some DACA into your Termagants and they kill like 15 or 12 of them or whatever, you can just resupply the 10 for free. If you take 10 out of the 30 and keep them in quote unquote, like, as your spawn Termagants inside her belly, there's a better chance that those 20 get fully wiped, and then you're not, then you're spawning 10 or whatever it is. And it's just, I feel like that's how I would play it, is I guess what I'm telling you. 30 Hormagaunts with Adrenal. Reese swears by this kind of a unit. They're really fast. They pile in super hard. They are just Termagants. They're just like really fast Termagants. So be aware of that. Don't get over aggressive with them and think that that's a super melee unit. It's more of a very fast kind of unit that you can use to kill straggling scouts. They can jump on a transport and fully surround it and maybe do the final couple of hull points to it. And it's actually, for that reason, I would almost tell you, save the 30 points on Adrenal and do not spend them there, in my opinion. They're pretty much as fast as it is, and I can't really think of a time where you're like, oh my god, I must make this Hormagaunt charge. The game depends on it. I don't know that that's going to happen that often. I'm not saying this because I think this is a huge glare in your list. I just think that might be true. So something to consider there. 3X Warriors with Devours plus Whip Sword plus 1 Barb Strangler. I prefer the Barb Strangler. I think that's fine, especially with the Tyranid Prime. It's all of a sudden hitting pretty reliably. It's still D6 shots. It's not gonna blow people's socks off. But it's still pretty cool. Strength 5 -1, range 36. It's not bad. This is a good backfield, like, a couple of guys, deep strike or an assault squad or something like that. You're in position to do some damage. 5 Hive Guard at only 240 points. And I assume you're doing the strength 8 shot that ignores line of sight. That's the way to run them. I love that. I have 6 Hive Guard myself, and I haven't put them in a list yet, but I think I love them in 8th edition. The high strength is really nice. The ignoring line of sight's nice. Ignoring cover is cool. I have forgotten a couple times and shot at Space Marines standing in ruins, and they're like, okay, cool, I got a 2-up, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So that's a nice way to run them as well. I love that part of your list. Spearhead Detachment, Broodlord, 20 Gene Stealers. We know it, we love it. And then 3x3 Biovores. That's 9 Biovores. I do like this. I like this because it's 108 points. What I don't like about this list is that you don't have a unit of Venom Tropes, and your list would benefit from that. So the way it's worded with Venom Tropes is a unit of 3 of them has a pretty good footprint, and then any unit within 3 of them gets the -1 to hit. So that's a big deal. You can absolutely string your, you could put them central to your Biovores and then string out your Termagants. You can string out your Hormagaunts, and those units become that much more survivable. It's not their save that's ever going to save any of those, except for the Biovores. 4-up's not bad. But the -1 to hit is going to turn off a lot of DACA that would get through that, because it is the DACA you're worried about. A last cannon hitting on a 4 is not going to do anything. Against your Biovores, that's pretty cool. But these things sitting in ruins with a -1 to hit becomes so much more survivable. So where do you find those points? Like I said, it's like 30 off the adrenal gland. And then you can move a couple of things somewhere else. I love the 9 Biovores. I did 6 wounds to a Morkanaut or whatever, or Gorkanaut, I can't remember which it is. And in one volley. Obviously, that was ridiculously lucky, but it was also pretty cool. It's a 5 or 6. You know, I rolled a 5 or 6 to hit off of 4+, and then I rolled 2 6s. Like, yep, just no, yeah, I hit 6 and then D3, and I did another 5 or 6. It was incredible, really good stuff. Love Biovores. I'm a little bit sad that they said that they can't Overwatch in the FAQ, because that was some tomfoolery. You charge them, and I would just spawn spore mines essentially in the middle of you, and you just take free mortal wounds. But that's great. Mortal wound just factory you got going on over there. Moloch with toxin sack, excuse me. 106 points. Yep. Don't mind that at all. Your points are interesting too, though. I was looking at my I'm paying 105 points for my Moloch. So you're saying toxic sack is 1 point? I was looking at, so there's an interesting thing in the index under Moloch. It says it has no war gear options, but then if you go over to the war gear page, it actually lists toxin sacks, I believe, and adrenal, and it says in parentheses for Moloch the different costs for them. So I don't know. That's a little bit of an interesting place. Trigon with adrenal is a must, and yeah, absolutely in love with it. So it's a great list. He says he's coming back from 5th edition, playing at 8th. Now that he's got time and money. Isn't that the truth? And he wants an all-comers list. I think this is a great list. You've got some good answers. You've got a lot of bodies. You're putting out a lot of good shots. A lot of decent mortal wounds. I think one of the kind of only criticisms I would have for your list is you don't have like a real definitive like spearhead. There's not like a... I could see you facing some really tough units, and you're not really doing heavy damage to them. You're like popping up with a Moloch, you're shooting 9 Biovores into them, and then maybe your warriors are in range, or not your warriors, your Hive Guard, and that's like your ideal scenario. And if you are doing all that, you could do some pretty decent damage, but your Biovores are reliably, per 3, doing 1 to 2 mortal wounds. Anything more than that is like gravy, so at best you're doing like 6 wounds from your Biovores. And then your warriors are doing like another 5 or 6 or something like that. So that's all not terrible. But if you think about facing like a 3-knight list, that'll be rough. But you can't really build a list in response to like if I'm playing against 3 knights every time. So I like this list. It has a lot of options. It is an all-comers list. I do like that. Even in the scenario I just talked about, if your Trigon makes that charge, that's fantastic. With this list, you could put the Genestealers in the Trigon Tunnel as well. And they could try to make that charge, which is pretty cool. Good stuff all around in that way. Of course, they'd be out of range of the Broodlords. That's the reason why you wouldn't want to do that, but nonetheless, you could still try that. A lot of bodies, though. So you got 20 Genestealers, 30 Hormagaunts, 30 Termagants, and you can actually remake some of the Termagants, which will never happen, by the way. But that's okay. That's not a reason not to take a Termagon. It's just that in this list, they'll never shoot your Termagants unless you force them to. But I like it. I like it a lot. And then he asked some questions about stuff that we kind of talked about later. His strategy he talked about is just tied up with Hormagaunts, Trigon and Moloch, Genestealer and Broodlord, move up the map. Hive Guard, taking out scary things, sitting in the middle of the field. Yep. All that's good. I like it. I like your list a lot. Okay. So let me close that one. We are on screen sharing, right? Yeah, we are. Sure. And then this is another list from the same guy. This one has Old One Eye, Stonecrusher Carnifex with Bioflail and Bioplasma. I love the Bioplasma. Like a range 10 or 12 or something like that. Heavy hitting Flamer. 2 by 3 Biovores. 5 Hive Guard. Malanthrope, double Moloch, another Stonecrusher. 3 Ripper Swarm. 16 Termagants. Patriarch and Familiar. And then he does the Vanguard detachment. 3 units, 10, 17, and 18 of Pure Strain, and 2 Patriarchs with some leftover points for a Patriarch and Familiar. This list is pretty darn cool as well. Obviously, the Stonecrushers have what it takes to get in there and do some serious damage. The Bioflail is interesting. The wording on that is a little bit curious. People are wondering if you can like make all of your attacks. Well, anyways, that's what some... I'm not going to even poke that bear. But only 121 points for a Stonecrusher Carnifex, which makes it laughable. It's like you would never take... You just wouldn't take a normal Carnifex, ever. The only reason you wouldn't is if you don't have the models, I guess. And even then, you can... I don't think anyone's going to stop you. Double Moloch, I love it. Absolutely love it. This time he's just running carte blanche. And then the Malanthrope is cool. The Malanthrope, as I imagine it, is going to walk up with Old One Eye and the Stone Crushers to give them that -1 coming in. And then this is just a lot of hard-hitting bodies that are kind of tough to kill, so I do enjoy that quite a bit. And the Patriarchs with their powers, I like that a lot. So I don't know that there's anything that I would tell you I would move around too much. The Ripper Swarm's interesting. A unit of 10 Termagants is what was that? 40 points? So they're actually cheaper. I'll have to look into that. I really don't care. I mean, it saves you 7 points, so it's not the biggest of deals. The Familiar obviously is just also leftover points. You heard my analysis earlier. I don't think it's super amazing. It's just like once per game. And I also smite, and it's like, meh, that's all right. And then he talks a little bit about how he wants to convert his Hive Guard. I like this list a lot. I think I probably like this list almost better. It's got lethality throughout it. This is a great unit. The Vanguard attachment, we know how I feel about that. And then the attacks, a couple of Stone Crushers, but they also have some decent shooting, which is something that is really fun that they add to that. I'm gonna have to look closer at it, but they're auto hits. They're flamer weapons. I believe D6, and they're just -2 or 3 or something like that, and maybe even 2 damage. They're really good. Not sure about the Bioflail as the best way to do it, but I just know that Stone Crushers are better. And then Old One Eye. We talked about it. We love it. Good. So yeah, that's another good list. I like it. And then we're getting into some Guard. And this is where I call on you guys to help me as well. So this is Guard with Adeptus Mechanicus. Okay. So right off the bat, it is a brigade. Tempester Prime with Power Maul, Rod of Command, 44 points, pretty cheap. Company Commander, Commissar. Commissars are absolutely necessary if you're going to run any kind of conscripts, which we get into down here. Tempestus Command Squad, 4 plasma guns. I don't know, is that still legal after the FAQ? I heard some whisperings that they toned down your ability to spam plasma guns. Maybe the command squads are still good, but maybe someone in the chat can answer that, or the comments rather. Plasma pistol, 2 plasma guns, 2 hotshot blast guns. So yeah, let me know about this. Obviously, Scions can deep strike, and this is a cheap unit that comes with a lot of plasma, so it's really, really awesome. Just let me know if it's still legal, actually. 20 conscripts for only 60 points. It's become one of the scourge of Warhammer 8th edition. People are absolutely loving it. Cheap troops that with a commissar can pretty reliably avoid being ran off the table or anything like that. Love that part of this. And then Rough Riders, 5, 10, 15 of them, only 40 points, really good, fast, a little bit more defensible, obviously. In a list like this, I think they're a little bit interesting, just that there's a lot of your list that's sitting there, and it's like either a gun line or it's deep striking in, and then you all of a sudden have these horse people that are, you know, probably looking to run up field or countercharge. That's okay. And it's only 120 points at the end of the day, but this is where I would look at your points and be like, maybe you can do something with this a little bit differently. I'm guessing, though, that you have 15 Rough Riders and you're not wanting to hear someone say, don't use your horse people. You probably want those anyways. And then you have Onager Dune Crawlers with the Icarus Array. They don't suffer the -1 to shoot at flyers. They're only 130 points. They're fairly defensible. They're awesome. You're absolutely stealing from the Adeptus Mechanicus awesomest list there is. That's just what they do. I guess I'm kind of wondering how you get them in here, though. Imperium. You have them in the brigade detachment. What am I missing here? How are you running Onagers in there? Because everything else... Is it because you think they're Imperium, I guess? Can you? I would check on that, because they are Imperium, but I believe these are specific keyword Adeptus Mechanicus, which certainly you could ally with these guys, but I think you need a separate detachment. I don't think they fit into a brigade detachment under Scions. So this might be an illegal list. I would definitely look at that. There's been a couple questions about that. Someone was asking if Gene Stealer Colt can fit into a detachment with Tyranids because they share the keyword Tyranid, so this would be kind of a similar situation. These are both Imperium, but I think it's faction keyword you also have to look at, and I believe this faction is Adeptus Mechanicus, whereas the rest of these guys are Guardsmen or whatever it's called, so I think that's illegal, but check into it. Mortars are awesome. I like that you have some long-range artillery in this list. And then Spearhead Detachment, a bunch of heavy bolters, with a Night Warden. The only thing, I don't know, this is pretty cool because it's anti-horde, which your list, surprisingly, a lot of times guard lists don't have. A lot of times they're like, no, more las cannons, more plasma, I just want to shoot stuff with big laser beams. So that's kind of cool. You're deep striking in, again, assuming this is legal, a lot of plasma, so you have anti-armor in there, and then with these heavy bolters, you have some good, like, oh no, I'm facing a bunch of Gene Stealers or something like that. This is awesome. And then I do like the Night Warden. It's a big wad of points in your list. It doesn't hit mega hard. The Gatling gun's okay. I wonder, I think it's almost 100 more points, isn't it, to make it a Night Crusader? And again, the last thing you want to hear is me saying, change your Knight to a Night Crusader. But I don't know. I would probably move this into this and make it a Night Crusader. The Battle Cannon is just that much better. You get the Reaper Chainsword you just are never using, except for against another super heavy, and you have so much plasma and stuff like that that it shouldn't come to that. So that's where I would consider going with that. Pask. Where's Pask? Do you have Pask somewhere in here? What the frog? Oh, there he is. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Generally speaking, I like your list, but I think it might be illegal, like I said, with the Onagers. So check into that. I feel like this is where you're going to trim up some of the points. And then post-FAQ, the whispering that I heard was that you can't deep strike as much from the command squads, I think it is. But let me know, comments. Let me know if I'm off base on this or where we're at with all that. Next list is a Eldar one. It's a mechanical Eldar one, if I'm not mistaken. Autarch, Skyrunner, Banshee Mask, Fusion Gun, 2 Autarchs, 2 Fire Dragon units, each with an Exarch, 2 Fire Prisms, 2 Night Spinners, 2 Hemlock Wraith Fighters, 2 Wave Serpents. So not the heaviest in terms of bodies, obviously, but it's fully mechanical, so a lot of this is hard to bring down pretty quickly. Obviously, the Hemlocks are really cool. They got a couple of psychic powers, and I would consider, I think there still is a Shriek, isn't there? I don't know what it is now, but I think I saw that on someone's list. And then Night Spinners and Fire Prisms obviously hit fairly hard. So that's pretty cool. I feel like your list a little bit falls by, it's a little bit baby in the bathwater, in that your list is going to be, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, well, I've got 4 Storm Ravens or 2 Fire Raptors, or I'm a gun line that's just basically all las cannons. I don't see your list being able to deal with that almost at all. I don't see a lot of crowd control. I see some pretty decent, I believe this has decent crowd control, the Night Spinners. But your Fire Prisms are just, you know, high octane shots. Your Fire Dragons are anti-armor as well, which is obviously cool. And then Wave Serpents put out a little bit of DACA, if I'm not mistaken. But I feel like your list in the meta specifically will struggle. I think where it will go pretty well is against some of the lists that, like, well, I don't know. So here's the thing. What does this list do well against? That's one of the kind of first questions I would ask, because I would be like, well, I think it does well against armor. You got a lot of anti-armor. Not really. Your delivery system of Fire Dragons is a bit rough, because you'll have to move up with Eldar transports to get there. And then if they even get there, that's cool. If they don't get there, you have Fire Dragons sitting on the middle of the map by themselves with nothing to protect them. Once they get popped out of the vehicle, that's it, right? You don't have any other form of survivability there. I know that's a non-unique problem for Eldar in general. It's not like the argument here is, yeah, they pop out and then there's 20 dire Avengers in front of them. It's like, no, that's not ever going to happen. But your delivery method, like if I'm looking at your list across the table from me, most people are like, well, I'm not going to shoot the fighters because I'm at least at -1, if not more. So that leaves me shooting at your other stuff. Okay, what am I really worried about? Probably the Wave Serpents, because I don't want those Fire Dragons to get at me. So you're going to have a lot of scenarios where 1 or 2 of your transports just don't make it anywhere, and your Fire Dragons, in my opinion, are never going to see the light of day of what they're facing, or they don't have anti-armor, and then you're like, sweet, and then you drive your wave serpents up, you shoot some guns, you get out with your fire dragons, and you're staring into the teeth of, like, 100 orc boys or a bunch of Khorne berserkers or gene stealers, and you're like, let's do it, boys. Let's kill like 5 or 6 of these guys and call it a day, and then you die. So this is like kind of scathing, and I do apologize, and I know you have all these models. This is me opening it up to you guys to tell me why I'm wrong. Why do you think this list is better than what I think it is? But as I look at it, I don't have a lot of faith in it. I would tell you, keep the Hemlock Wraith Fighters. I think they're great. I do like the transports, but I would consider something different for the Night Spinners and Fire Prisms, perhaps. Or if someone can tell me that Night Spinners are the best thing ever at shooting into crowds, that's cool. I know that Autarchs are cheap troop choices, and they do a lot. Is it Autarchs that give you like a bubble of reroll 1s? I think it is. That's pretty cool. And obviously they have fusion guns, so that too is another way of dealing with anti-armor. But lack of bodies, Eldar mechanical is cool, but some of the more killable vehicles in the game. I do like the flyers, though. I think that's the best part about this list, is that they balance out some of the threats really well, so they can jump forward and kind of deal some damage out to the anti-armor. Right. Have that up. Didn't have that up. I'm a real professional guy. And then we get into a Gene Stealer list, or not Gene Stealer, but a Tyranid list. So Vanguard Detachment, Gene Stealer Cult, Patriarch, Massive Gnosis, yep, 12, 24, 36, Pierce Strain, love it. Malanthrope, 12 Hormagaunts, Screen Exocrines, Biovores, and Malanthrope, yep. 3 Biovores, 2 Exocrine, and then Spearhead, triple Moloch, Tyrannocyte with Barbed Stranglers, Swarmlord. I like it. Obviously, triple Moloch is awesome. They just pop up and they can put in quite a pretty reliable amount of mortal wounds into stuff, especially if you can triple tag it. I love what they do to deployments. If people have like I've hit 2 or 3 units almost reliably every single time, and if it's like a Devastator unit where 4 of the 5 guys have frickin' 40-point guns, that's awesome. You're just reliably killing several of them, or all of them. Gene Stealers for bodies, you only have 36 with a Broodlord. That means that if any of those units lose 3 guys, they drop down 1 attack, so their efficacy comes down with them a little bit. And you will lose 3 guys. Basically, if 5 scouts shoot into a unit, you're gonna lose a couple. In the Spearhead Detachment, 12 Termagants as a screen. What I would tell you to consider is, I'm looking at your list, I would say trim the Termagants, and if you need a screen, in a game, you just basically take one of the Pierce Strain units and put it there as a screen. Because what are you screening against? You're screening against deep striking big guns or something like that. Well, you're going to want those Gene Stealers to charge them anyways, and now they're also providing that screen. They usually can fulfill the role of both, which is what I'm trying to tell you. So that's not a lot of points you're saving by trimming off 12 Termagants, but it is something to think about if you want to move points around. I love the Deep Striking Swarmlord. That's something that I do in my own games. Callous and Horror, yep, that's exactly what we'd go with. Exocrines, fantastic. And then the Malanthrope, of course, is better than the Venomthropes in this case because it actually benefits the Exocrines. Gives Synapse back there, which is, not the biggest of deals, but nice for the leaderships, I guess, for your units of Biovores and stuff like that. It's a pretty good list. The other thing here, too, is, well, no. Yeah, I don't know. I just see a little bit of the fat with the Termagants that you can trim off there, move somewhere else. But even if you disagree with me, I don't think that that's like this glaring hole in this list. But I do like it. You have anti-armor with the Exocrines. The Biovores are just peeling off a few wounds here and there. Triple Moloch, I think, is one of the best parts of your list. And then the Swarmlord just jumps in and is a huge disruptor. Which, by the way, frees you up time to get these Gene Stealers up there. The only reason I don't like it, though, is, like I said, just a very little amount of DACA drops one of these units down to 6, 7 Gene Stealers, and then all of a sudden in Overwatch they can die to like a single flamer. So that's something to consider. The 20-ish bodies is very much so important. So maybe you free up some points with the Termagants. Maybe drop one Moloch and then fill this out to make it closer to 50 or 60 Genestealers. His second list, Malanthrope, Swarmlord, same thing. 16 Hormigons with Adrenal Glands. These go in the Trigon and use their 6-inch pylon and consolidate to tag as many units as possible. Turn 1. Rippers because they're cheap. 10 Termagons with Flesh Borers, screening. Yep. X-Screen, Trigon. Front of sight with Barb Stranglers. And then 16 by 16 by 16 with the Patriarch. Yeah. I think this is also a pretty fantastic list. I'm in love with this detachment right here. You're never going to hear me go, I don't know. Especially at 16. The closer to 20 you get, the happier I get. It's like this weird Geoff barometer thing. And I actually, I too thought about freeing up points by only doing a single Patriarch. It's not like the two of them becomes this like super incredible, amazing thing where that is this unique threshold that I hit and it just becomes amazing. The reason I go with 2 is because they're awesome for their points. And then of course it just doubles down on them giving that bubble of fearlessness for the Genestealers, but also the hitting on a 2+. I just think their powers are worth doubling down on. Mass Hypnosis and Mind Control are insane. But I don't mind seeing you cut this corner and only have the 1. But I really like that detachment. I like the Barb Stranglers. I like the Swarmlord. Let's see. How many... And you don't have any Molochs. That's what you dropped for this. I think I like the first list a bit more. Triple Moloch is incredible. You're cutting corners with these Genestealers, but I don't mind it. And then I like your backfield with the Exocrines. And you still have the Swarmlord. So I think I like your first list more. It's a bit more lopsided, obviously. If they are smart and deployed in a certain way or don't have a list that's very good for Molochs, then you can get into some trouble there. But Molochs combined with Biovores for a turn 1, just like, hey, how do you feel about 12 to 15 wounds just being removed from you? In an ideal world, it's obviously less than 12 to 15. It's like closer to 10. But that's awesome. Okay, so yeah. So that is going to do it for right now, guys. Thank you so much. This was a long-ass video. This is just the way I frickin' do it. Can't even get back to my screen. There it is. Okay, cool. But primarily, I'm hoping for a lot of feedback from you guys. So I said a lot of stuff that's very opinion-based off the top of my head. It's what I know from practice and from scouring the books, but I don't have them in front of me. I didn't research this video. This is all off the top of my head. So let me know if you agree, disagree, what you think, what was right, what was wrong, and what you like, what you don't like. And if you want to submit lists in the future, I'm going to have in the description that email that these guys emailed into. The best way to do it would be a written format, and if you do care about, having your name appear nowhere on it at all, then just give me a format like this that I can just like copy paste and put onto a different page. A couple people use like graphics and stuff like that, like we saw, which is really cool, but it makes it so that at least in my world, I can't easily hide your name. Anyways, appreciate it all. We'll talk soon. I'm going to be gone for a little while, but when we come back, we'll be talking about the BAO and stuff like that. You guys take it easy. Thank you so much, and I'll see you later.